welcome to Rightly Decided. I'm Laura Beth Latimer, and I am coming to you from the blue void that is the mobile podcast studio at Texas Policy Summit 2026. We are here today for a really special episode, for some really exciting information that we are able to bring today. I am sitting here with attorney Nathan Seltzer, who all of you I'm sure are familiar with at this point in time, and our policy scholar, Ben Crockett, and one of our clients in one of our cases, Haley Kiles. Haley, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk about the case that obviously you're a client in, because nobody cares about anything else, which is what we affectionately refer to as the Death Star case. So, Ben, you were one of the staffers that was instrumental in getting what we call in Texas the Death Star Act. What is it? House Bill 2127?
That's exactly right.
Getting
House
that
Bill
passed?
2127 from the 88th regular session. Then Representative Dustin Burrows was instrumental in the crafting of that bill. And what the bill does, the Death Star bill, as it was called by opponents of the bill at the time, we referred to it as the Regulatory Consistency Act. But it sought to allow the state to create uniform regulations over commerce, right? And so it did field preemption of a couple different codes: labor, occupations, agriculture, insurance, etc. Because if you think about it, if you're a small business, you don't want to have to deal with a complex, complicated, ever-evolving cornfield of regulations that's different across the state. If you operate in Dallas and you also want to open a shop in Houston, you don't want to have to hire 30 lawyers for a compliance division to navigate thousands of regulations.
Absolutely. So we had, prior to this, the issue in commerce of there being multiple tiers of regulation, right? It wasn't just the state that had regulation over commerce. It was the state, and then counties, and then cities. And the Death Star bill, now the Death Star Act, did what to fix that problem? What was the solution?
So it preempted field. So in the past, prior to the Death Star bill, there were a couple of pieces of legislation that was sort of spot preemption. There's a couple of ceiling preemption bills, a couple of floor preemption bills in the past. And what those do, in essence, is just say, okay, you can have regulations that are more restrictive than or less restrictive than. But what made the Death Star, I think, unique for Texas is it did two key things. First, it took entire fields of regulation at the state level that pertained to commerce, labor, agriculture, insurance, occupations, and it preempted them, but also how it gave the state...
So it preempted the field, right?
Yeah,
so what it means is that if the state passed a regulation in this area, like the labor code, if it's regulating labor, then Dallas or another city couldn't come in and pass a similar regulation dealing with labor at all.
That's correct. They can't conflict, and you can't adopt or enforce an ordinance, rule, or other measure in those fields now.
So, Haley, you started, you're the client at the core of this lawsuit. Let's talk a little bit about your relation to the city of Dallas. First of all, this is a taxpayer standing statute, which means that anybody who's a taxpayer in the area can bring a claim against the city. So how long have you been in the city of Dallas?
I have been living in the city of Dallas for 8 years.
And in those 8 years, have you encountered the city of Dallas in a regulatory fashion?
I have.
Has it been good, bad?
It's been a pain, to say the least.
I'm sure. We will get into that more in a few minutes. But now I want to turn to your lawyer real quick. Nathan,
Yay.
You are the litigator that is attached to the first suit that's been brought under the Death Star Act. So, Nathan, what was the kind of inciting incident that made Haley decide to bring this case in particular against the city of Dallas?
Yeah, the story of this is actually pretty funny. So when the Death Star bill was proposed, the cities began to use lobbying to lobby against the bill. And one of the things they came up with was the moniker Death Star. It was actually called the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act, if anyone's keeping track at home, but now it's universally known as the Death Star bill. And what they were trying to do was keep the bill from being passed. So some of the state legislatures were against the bill and were trying to lobby. And they went to one of the legislatures, Rafael Anchia from Dallas, from the Dallas area, went to the city and said, what ordinances will be impacted if the Death Star bill is passed? And Dallas very, very helpfully wrote a memo detailing 133 ordinances that they thought would be preempted if the Death Star bill is passed. Fast forward 3 months, the Death Star bill passes, right? So now
you have this memo with 100 and how many? 133?
133 ordinances.
133 ordinances that Dallas has just said, yeah, all of these would be illegal if the bill passed. And so now we have just basically an admission from the city of Dallas that all of these are illegal.
Not quite, because the city of Dallas then said that they did not. Texas Public Policy Foundation sent a public information request to the city of Dallas saying, we'd like to see that memo, please, of the 133 ordinances. And they said, no, we don't have to release it. It's not public information. But because Representative Bonchia had referenced it on the floor of the House, we felt like we had a pretty good claim to be able to get that memorandum. So there was a big fight over the memo about whether or not we would actually have to get at this. The city of Dallas wound up suing the Attorney General to try to prevent the release of the memo. And eventually they... In the middle of the lawsuit,
this wasn't a public memo whatsoever. We had to actually fight for
it was
for
a
this memo to be
secret
released.
memo, but it was talked about out loud. And so what we're saying is what our claim was that because Representative Bonchia was talking about the memo and what it said and things on the House floor, that should be public. I think we eventually would have won the case, but it didn't come up because eventually they just said, you know what? Reporters were asking and pushing and everything, and they said, so eventually one of the representatives just handed the memo to a reporter and mooted our case. We would have liked to win that case.
Yeah, well.
But now we have the
win.
memo.
A win is a win. A moot is a win.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
all right. So we get the memo. Let's talk about the 133 things that are on this memo. It's a lot. Are they all perfectly reasonable? Like, absolutely normal, everyday American taxpayers would agree that these things that are regulated should be regulated?
Absolutely. Everything is really normal
because
as long
the
as...
city is a very normal place.
Yes. As long as you think that someone under the age of 18 should not be able to... as long as they should not be able to sell you a baseball mitt. A child under the age of 18 can't sell you a baseball mitt.
In the city of Dallas, a child under the age of 18 can't sell a baseball mitt.
Correct.
Just in general.
Period.
So if I own a sporting goods store, I can't hire a child under the age of 18.
I hadn't thought about that angle, but certainly if you went to a garage sale and like a kid was selling his baseball, that kind of thing would definitely be out.
Okay.
There's a lot of other ones that we can get into. They had 133 of these ordinances, and we sued over. We kind of condensed it down and sued over 83 ordinances, and you might be saying to yourself, surely there's not 83 ordinances that are all illegitimate under this bill. But I can just go down a list and tell you some of them.
Before you get there, I do in a minute want you to do that because it is, oh boy, is it something.
Yeah.
But first, I want to kind of hammer down on something real quick because it might sound to an ordinary listener like Sweet Miss Kyle's here is just out there violating 65 ordinances and she doesn't want the city to get mad at her. But no, this is specifically taxpayer funded or taxpayer standing. So are these ordinances particularized to you, or are these ordinances that were just cherry picked because they're the wildest ones?
I think they're not necessarily, they're all the taxpayers, right? Everyone's affected by these in some way, in some capacity. And it gets to the point where you look at some of these and they're just fundamentally not correct. And so you just get to the point where if you don't do it, who's going to do it? And then you might have some random kid, like you said, at a garage sale, get prosecuted or something over selling a baseball glove.
Right.
It's outrageous.
Because we can just decide to enforce these or not enforce them on a
Correct.
whim, as long as
with
they're
our
on the
DA,
books.
you never know.
Yeah. What a fun roll of the dice to play. So let's roll the dice, Nathan, and see what things we can and can't do in the city of Dallas without the Death Star bill.
All right, so Chapter 39B of the Death Star bill says that if you would like to fix a printer for a business, if you're doing that as a business, if you're getting paid, that you must file a report with the chief of police within 5 days after fixing that printer, or you're subject to criminal penalties, and the penalty accrues every day. Section...
So hang on. So what?
No, I got more.
Oh, I know you do, but I want to talk about this one.
Okay.
I have to tell the chief of police if I'm going to fix my friend's printer and she's going to give me $20 for it?
Of course not. You just have to let them know within 5 days after having fixed it.
Oh, so if I fix it and I don't tell them after the fact, then I can be in trouble. Okay, well that's reasonable then. Okay, go on.
If you're in a public park, you can't make a noise that's audible within outside of 150 feet. So that might seem reasonable, except that things that are examples of things that are audible at more than 150 feet would be a car door closing, children playing, basketball bouncing, birds chirping, cell phone ringing.
I was specifically thinking about, those bullhorns and all these protests.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's not necessarily even that broad. Like 150 feet is not that far in a quiet, empty park.
This conversation would be audible in a park at greater than 150 feet. So we're talking about an ordinance that's really mandates very quiet things.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is like kind of a personal favorite of mine. You cannot create filth on Lake Ray Hubbard.
What is filth?
It doesn't say.
Oh.
But you can't. It doesn't say you
create
can't.
it.
Yeah, it doesn't say you can't pollute because that's already illegal under state law, and they don't use the word pollute. They just say you can't create filth. So you might be able to deposit filth, but you can't create it on Lake Ray Hubbard. The other lakes, there's no law about that.
Okay, so we can go create filth on any of the other lakes.
Any of
if
the
we
lakes
wanted
regulated
to.
by Dallas except Lake Ray Hubbard. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Chapter 15 is, I don't think it's officially called this, but I think it's the Footloose Ordinance. It creates a tiered dance hall registration structure, A through E. So like an E-rated dance hall is the one with the least dancing, and then D has slightly more dancing all the way up to A, which is the most dancing.
And there's different regulations that pertain to each grade of dance hall?
Yes, and different amounts that you have to pay when you register with the city.
Based on the amount of dancing that occurs?
Yes. I'm not
So,
sure if that's subjective or objective.
For those of you who are just listening and not watching this podcast right now, Mr. Crockett is wearing just the most beautiful bow tie.
Thank you.
And you are dressed in the most dapper way, and I have to assume that you are a dancer. Do you sometimes cut footloose is my question.
I think everyone's dabbled.
Everyone has dabbled
Yeah.
in the foot. So you would conceivably be affected by the footloose ordinance.
No, I mean, I definitely could be harmed, I think, by the Footloose Ordinance. And, you have to imagine a Footloose monitor going in there, making how many feet, how many dancers do we have? I mean, you have the compliance cost that hypothetically could be associated with this. And they infringe on my God-given right to dance the Footloose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely they do. Nathan, what else do you have?
I can go through a few more. You must, if you would like to promote anything and you're being paid, you have to register with the city.
So if I hang a for sale sign on the outside of my car, that could count.
Or if you wanted to like talk to someone about an event that's coming, anything like that. If you're doing any kind of promotion, then you have to register with the city first. So that may violate the First Amendment.
Yeah,
but whether
absolutely.
it does or not, this is, again, what we're saying is just the state law already regulates if someone needs to be regulated in terms of promoting certain things, like there's already statewide regulations for boxing, promotion, and things like that. So those things are already regulated. But if you want to promote anything, you also have to register with the city of Dallas.
I mean, I think the silliness of all of this aside, and like you said, there's some First Amendment questions here. There's some weird, maybe we're violating some other constitutional rights here. But fundamentally, and the reason that this is a statute based on taxpayer standing is that all of this requires government money to enforce.
Right.
Ms. Kyles, how does it make you feel to know that this is what your tax dollars are going to?
Oh, I mean, it's super frustrating. I mean, our taxes are already out the roof, like our property taxes, and it's so great what they're doing down here in legislation, but then it comes to Dallas and they up everything when it comes to the school taxes. And so everything's wiped out. And then you look at something like this and you're like, this is what y'all are spending my money on after you're raking all of us over the coals. This is the hill we're going to die on.
We need to send somebody out to inspect the dance
Footloose.
halls.
Yes. And I'm
make
still
sure.
like, how do you grade this dance hall?
Yeah.
Like, quick step, two
Very
step?
studious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I want to know, quite frankly. And the good news is that if we are successful in this suit, we will never have to find out how you grade a dance hall.
But all these ordinances, as Haley said, that all these ordinances, the city is spending money to enforce each one. They have to have compliance officers, they have to have administration, all these things, all these costs that are built into enforcing a wide variety of ordinances. And when you pare that back, spending goes down, theoretically, property taxes go down. And that's really what we're looking for.
Absolutely. Property taxes go down. And I think on a more fundamental level, too, we are Americans. We don't like having our liberties infringed. If I have a child under the age of 18, I want my child to be able to sell his baseball glove to his friend, right? It is such a simple, basic principle of being an American that we are allowed to do all of these very little minute things without the government reaching in and saying, no, I don't think so. I'd rather keep an eye on that. I'd rather know about the printers that are being fixed. Please inform me within 5 days.
Right. Could you please go after the person across the street that hasn't mowed their lawn in 3 weeks?
Exactly.
I don't care about your printer.
Exactly. We are worried about things that are far too small. And this is what the Texas Public Policy Foundation is all about. It is making Texas and America the freest place on earth. And we don't do that unless and until we get rid of these little tiny statutes and rules that are infringing on our ability to just live our lives in the way that we see fit.
And I will say, to Dallas's credit, after we sent them the letter letting them know that they had all these ordinances in violation of state law, which they already knew because they had written the memo that said that they were in violation of state law. But after we sent them the letter saying that we were going to sue them, they actually repealed 4 of the ordinances. And so not the ones that are now in our lawsuit, but 4 other ones. And so it's good that they took that step. We'd just like to see them take the step to repeal the other 83, and we could just end this controversy right now.
Right. We're not in this to win it necessarily in the sense that like, oh, we want the victory behind we're trying to make a difference here. And if that difference comes by the city repealing their statutes or their rules that violate the statute, cool.
Still a win.
Still a win. We'll take it. So, City of Dallas, if you are listening to us right now, in addition to being the named plaintiff on this case, you are the first person, Ms. Kiles, to step forward and file a suit against the City of Dallas under this act. Those of us in the public litigation sphere know how hard it is for people to agree to become clients in these cases, to agree to be the person who puts their life out there for everyone to see. What gives you the courage? What gives you the motivation to come after a statute or to come after a city like this?
When you see something like when you are affected by tax dollars on a daily basis and you constantly see them rising and then you find out that they're spending your tax dollars on these astronomical things, you're beyond frustrated and you become empowered to do something about it. And then your frustration turns into action and your action turns into moving forward. And it's also for like the greater good, right? It's for the next generation. It's for community. It's for everyone right and left. Like it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum, you're affected by these when it comes to your tax dollars. It's unacceptable.
It is absolutely unacceptable. Ben, you are still a staffer with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. This is not the last iteration of the Death Star bill, to my knowledge, that's going to hit the legislature in the next few years. What does the future of this bill look like?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question. We have some research that's forthcoming and will be published soon and be made available to the public, but also our partners in the legislature. A couple of sort of sneak peek items from what will be in there. Last legislative session during the 89th, my colleague, James Quintero, said, well, there was all this hemming and hawing from cities about all of their regulations that could potentially be preempted by the Death Star. And so he sent out public information requests to those cities and counties, and crickets. We have no idea. We don't have the document. Who knows?
Yeah.
Which ordinances could be preempted was essentially the widespread response. And so in our paper, what we do is we look at, well, how can we increase oversight of these cities? Is there perhaps an office in the governor's office or elsewhere that could go through and examine with a fine-tooth comb the ordinances that may or may not be on the books that potentially conflict with state law? There's some other things that we're looking at in terms of the enforcement mechanism that are somewhat novel. Some adjustment to maybe broaden standing for different groups and organizations, perhaps those that testify on the legislation. There's a number of different things, both on the enforcement side, the oversight side, and the transparency side that we're looking at. And for those Texans listening at home and in the legislature that are interested, it'll be up soon at texaspolicy.com, and we look forward to hearing their feedback, I think.
Absolutely. One last question, Nathan. What is the status of this litigation? Where are we at right now?
So right now we're waiting. That Dallas is asked to dismiss the case effectively. And so we're going to hear a plea to the jurisdiction on that case, which is a fancy way of saying that they want to dismiss the case and make it go away.
In any other state, we'd call it a motion to dismiss?
Yes.
Yeah.
But in Texas, Texas is special.
They are. So special.
And it's a joy to litigate here. It really is. But so we're going to have a hearing on that coming up on April 23rd in Denton County. In Denton County. So in Denton, rather. And it'd be fun to talk about that on different podcasts, maybe. And then we'll see where it goes from there. Either way, whoever loses that at that hearing will be able to appeal. And so we're going to be in the Court of Appeals pretty soon.
And we have hunkered down, and this is a long-term project for us.
That's it. Yeah, we're going to take it all the way as far as we need to.
And again, thank you guys so much for being here. Ms. Kiles, thank you. Ben, thank you so much for your time. That brings us to the end of today's docket. We appreciate you tuning in on this very special Blue Void podcast of Rightly Decided. If you've enjoyed this, leave us a comment. Do check out Ben's research on the new upcoming version of the Death Star bill, and join us next time for more Rightly Decided.